The first thing that demands our attention about this newly discovered object is not simply its appearance, but the way it moves. And movement, in the language of the universe, is everything. If you want to know whether something is natural or engineered, simple or advanced, random or intentional, you study how it behaves in motion. Now, what stands out here is that this object does not move like a comet, an asteroid, or a piece of drifting cosmic debris. It does not tumble in a chaotic rotation. It does not simply follow the gravitational curve of the sun or the path dictated by momentum from wherever it originated. Instead, it demonstrates what scientists have cautiously described as controlled adaptive motion. And that is where the conversation changes entirely. When scientists model objects in space, they expect certain rules to apply, rules that have governed celestial mechanics since long before humans learned how to write, farm, or form societies. Gravity pulls, momentum carries, mass determines influence. But this object, when observed over a series of days and trajectory analysis, showed velocity adjustments that could not be accounted for by gravitational interactions alone. Imagine something slowing itself slightly, then shifting direction, not wildly or chaotically, but with an almost intentional correction, as if it were aware of its surroundings. That does not happen naturally. Space does not randomly produce objects that behave with deliberation. Now, here is where the narrative becomes even more compelling. Space agencies and researchers attempted to compare these movements with known natural phenomena. Comet outgassing rotational jets or subtle gravitational tug from nearby objects, but the data did not align. No matter how they tried to fit this object into the conventional framework, the behavior continued to resemble the signature of propulsion, even if extremely subtle. And propulsion, whether chemical, electromagnetic, or otherwise, is always a sign of directed movement. If something moves with purpose, then we are no longer talking about a simple rock drifting through the void. We are talking about something that may have been constructed, guided, or at the very least influenced by intelligent processes. This does not mean that the object is a spacecraft in the way science fiction has led us to imagine: sleek, metallic, symmetrical, glowing. Intelligence does not have to resemble us. Technology does not have to look like what we design, but the principle remains: natural objects do not adjust course. They do not maintain alignment. They do not respond to external conditions in a manner that suggests awareness or stabilization. Only something engineered toward a purpose behaves this way. And I want you to consider the psychological weight of that possibility. Because if this object is controlled even slightly, then we are forced to confront a question humanity is historically uncomfortable with. What if we are not the only architects of technology in the universe? Not the first, not the most advanced, and certainly not the center of anything. That single realization destabilizes more than science. It destabilizes identity. But let's come back to the motion itself, because that is where the evidence speaks the loudest. The object decelerated in a region of space where deceleration makes no logical sense. There is no atmospheric drag to slow it, no planetary gravity pulling at it strongly enough to cause the reduction in speed. It is as if something internal moderated its velocity. Then data suggests a small but measurable change in angle, again, not the result of collision, not the result of random spin, but an adjustment similar to a course correction. When analysts saw this pattern, the internal discussions were cautious, measured, even hesitant, because the moment one acknowledges that an object demonstrates intentional motion, every scientific, philosophical, and political implication enters the room at once. Scientists do not fear the unknown. They fear being the first to announce something that challenges the established worldview. Governments fear even more because power relies on stability, predictability, and public confidence. And nothing destabilizes a society faster than telling people the universe may contain others who are older, more advanced, or simply not human. So they will do what institutions always do when reality threatens the narrative. They will slow the information, frame the language carefully, release data in fragments, and hope the public absorbs it gradually. But the movement of this object cannot be hidden. It can be observed by anyone with access to sky tracking telescopes and the proper software to analyze trajectory. In other words, the truth is not locked behind classified walls. It is unfolding above all of us in open space, visible to any who are willing to watch closely. The movement speaks, the movement signals, the movement suggests purpose, and purpose in the cosmos is never an accident. What makes this situation even more astonishing is not merely the new object itself, but its relationship to 3FATOS, the interstellar object that entered our solar system from beyond our cosmic neighborhood. 3IDLAS was already a subject of worldwide scientific interest because it did not originate here. It is a visitor, a traveler from a region of space we have not mapped, understood, or touched. And now, to see another object appearing to follow or align with it raises questions that strike at the core of how we understand cosmic events. This is not the kind of coincidence we can dismiss easily or quickly. The universe is vast, so vast that the odds of two unrelated objects from outside the solar system arriving along similar paths at similar times are so astronomically small that probability alone forces us to consider that we may be witnessing something coordinated rather than random. If you want to capture the attention of policymakers, scientists, intelligence agencies, or global powers, this is how you do it. Not with dramatic claims, but with patterns. Patterns are the fingerprints of intention, and what we see here is a pattern of behavior, motion, and alignment that defies the idea that these events are isolated. There is a reason this discovery is making researchers uncomfortable, because they know that when objects from beyond our solar system move in relation to one another, something greater is occurring. Let us consider the known path of 3ILAS. It entered our solar system at a speed and angle that indicated it had been traveling for an immense amount of time, longer than human civilization has existed, longer than Earth has held the ecosystems we recognize today. It is ancient in the truest sense of the word. Now imagine something else traveling with it. Not physically attached, not gravitationally bound, but in coordinated trajectory. That is not a natural pairing. Natural objects scatter. They drift apart. They do not hold formation. Formation suggests awareness, and awareness in space introduces a different level of conversation entirely. Scientists attempted to explain the alignment as gravitational capture, but the numbers fail. The distances are too large, the influence too weak, the behavior too precise. If this object were merely debris trailing behind 3IATLS, its trajectory would be erratic. Instead, we see a path that mirrors, adjusts, and remains consistent, which implies that the object is responding, not simply drifting. Now ask yourself, why is this detail not being emphasized in mainstream news? Why are the largest space agencies speaking in calm, overly simplified language? Phrases like unusual but likely natural requires further study and premature to speculate. Because the moment the public understands that two interstellar objects may be connected, the conversation becomes uncontrollable. It invites questions that no government on this planet is prepared to answer. It challenges the long-standing narrative that Earth is isolated, that humanity sits atop the ladder of intelligence, that we are the authors of our own cosmic story. This discovery forces us to entertain the possibility of interstellar communication, observation, or travel, not in the melodramatic, cinematic sense, but in the quiet, calculated, observational sense. What if this object is not here to interact? What if it is simply here to watch, to record, to map, to study? Because every great civilization begins not with conquest, but with observation. Before you act, you learn. Before you speak, you listen. Before you engage, you understand your environment thoroughly. And if something out there has been observing us, then we are not alone in the universe, nor have we ever been. There is another angle to consider. 3i 80 is not just an interstellar traveler, it is a messenger of time. Whatever region of space it came from is so distant that humanity has no current technological means of reaching or communicating with it. It is entirely possible that it belongs to an older cosmic network. So when we see another object linked to it, we are witnessing continuity, a thread that connects points across a scale of time and space we have never navigated. The hook here is undeniable. If these two objects are connected, then someone or something has the ability to send, guide, or position objects across interstellar distances. That is technology so far beyond us that our most advanced spacecraft look like children's toys in comparison, and yet the data is there. The alignment is real. The movement is real. The implications are real. The question is no longer whether something extraordinary has occurred. The question is whether we are prepared to face what it means. What stands out more than the discovery itself is the silence surrounding it, not confusion, not lack of data, not uncertainty, silence. A silence that feels deliberate. When something of this scale happens in the scientific world, the usual response is immediate collaboration, publication, and open debate. Yet here, what we are seeing is caution, careful language, delayed statements, a kind of strategic patience. And whenever institutions respond in this manner, it is rarely because nothing is happening. It is because something significant is happening, something they have not yet figured out how to explain without altering the public's understanding of reality. Space agencies, research institutions, and government science bureaus have access to higher resolution data than the public does. They have already tracked the object's motion. They have already compared it against known natural models. They already understand that the behavior is irregular. So the silence is not because they don't know what is happening. The silence is because they know they cannot yet control the narrative surrounding it. If they speak too soon, the story escapes their hands. And once the story escapes, it begins to reshape how people think about themselves, their place in the universe, and the limits of human civilization. Governments do not fear the unknown in the scientific sense. They fear the social reaction to the unknown. Uncertainty in the public produces anxiety, and anxiety produces instability. And instability is the one thing no political institution can afford, because power relies not on force alone, it relies on belief. The belief that the people in charge understand the world, the belief that the system is stable, predictable, and managed, the belief that someone somewhere has control. When something appears that threatens that belief, whether a pandemic, a financial collapse, or a mysterious object moving with signs of intention, governments do not rush to inform, they rush to contain. And containment does not mean hiding the truth. It means controlling its timing, the language, the framing, the emotional tone. They wait until they can tell the public how to think about it before admitting that it exists. That is why official statements sound so strangely neutral. They speak in vague terms. More research is needed. The object appears ordinary. There is no current evidence of unconventional origin. These are not clarifications. These are stalling techniques, because once the public sees what scientists see, a cascade of questions automatically follows. If the object is moving with controlled behavior, who is controlling it? If it is aligned with an interstellar traveler, is it part of something larger? And if something larger exists, what does that mean for humanity's place in the cosmic order? These are not small questions. These are questions that reshape religion, philosophy, global cooperation, and national identity. And no government is prepared to navigate those shifts without preparation. You must also understand that there are geopolitical dimensions to this. If one nation admits the possibility of an intelligently guided interstellar object, they risk appearing uninformed if another nation claims to know more. This becomes not just a scientific issue, but a strategic one. If contact or observation is occurring, which government wants to be the last to acknowledge it? The last to prepare for it, the last to understand it? Silence becomes a competitive posture, a waiting game. Who will speak first and who will speak with authority? Meanwhile, the public is left in a strange kind of quiet, where rumors circulate, leaked information spreads through research communities, and amateur astronomers begin to pick up the patterns themselves. And this is where the real tension forms, because unlike past eras, information is no longer restricted to official channels. Anyone with a telescope, tracking software, and analytical skill can confirm what is happening, meaning the truth is not fully containable anymore. And this is the hook that changes everything. The silence itself tells us the magnitude of the discovery. If this were nothing, there would be no need to manage the narrative. If this were ordinary, there would be no hesitation. Institutions do not hesitate when the explanation is simple. They hesitate when the explanation changes the world. So the question becomes, how long can they maintain the silence? And more importantly, what happens the moment they can no longer control the story? What this discovery truly confronts us with is not just the presence of something unfamiliar in our skies, but the fragility of the story we've told ourselves about who we are. For generations, humanity has believed, implicitly or explicitly, that we are central, that our intelligence is the pinnacle of evolution, that our technology is the measure of advancement, that our planet, in all its complexity and life, occupies a special place in the cosmos. This belief has shaped our religions, our sciences, our politics, and even our personal identities. But when an object appears that behaves in ways that resemble purpose, alignment, or design beyond our current capability, it shakes the foundation of that story. And when it aligns with an interstellar traveler already known to originate from beyond our solar system, the tremor becomes impossible to ignore. The implications are not simply scientific, they are existential. If this object is the product of intelligence beyond Earth, then humanity is no longer the reference point for understanding the universe. We are no longer at the center of the map. We are simply one part of a vast, ongoing process that extends beyond our comprehension. And that shift is uncomfortable because it forces us to recognize that we may be early, not advanced, developing, not completed, observed, not observing. It forces us to rethink everything from our history to our destiny. But let's speak plainly. If an object demonstrates control, coordination, and trajectory awareness, then we are dealing with something that exceeds our technological reach. And if something else out there is more advanced than we are, then the question becomes, what do they know that we do not? Because intelligence never evolves in isolation. It evolves with purpose, adaptation, and continuity. If another civilization has mastered interstellar travel, surveillance, or long-distance monitoring, then they have solved problems that humanity still struggles to understand: energy sustainability, long-term survival, conflict resolution, bioengineering, the physics of propulsion beyond chemical means. They may have reached stages of development that we have only imagined in theory. And that realization, instead of diminishing us, should expand us. It should pull us forward, challenge our assumptions, and invite us into a broader conversation about what it means to be alive, conscious, and capable in a universe that is clearly full of life and intelligence. The discovery is not a threat unless we respond to it with fear. It becomes a threat only when we assume that difference implies danger. And that is the reflex of an insecure civilization, one that still defines itself through conquest, control, and dominance. Humanity has always feared what arrives from beyond its borders. When new lands were discovered on Earth, our first response was not curiosity, it was occupation. When new cultures were encountered, our first reaction was not understanding, it was superiority. We projected insecurity outward. Now, for the first time, we may be encountering something that cannot be conquered, cannot be colonized, cannot be shaped into our image, something that simply exists at a level of development beyond our grasp. And that forces us into a new position, one we are not used to: the student, not the master. But being the student is not shameful. It is powerful. It means there is more to learn, more to build, more to become. If we acknowledge the possibility that this object is part of a larger intelligence, then humanity stands at the edge of a transition. A transition from being a species confined to one world, limited by its own conflicts and divisions, to a species capable of recognizing itself within a greater cosmological context. But that requires humility, and humility has never been easy for us. Yet here is the hook, the turning point, the realization we cannot escape. The universe does not care about our assumptions. It does not bend to our beliefs. It continues to reveal itself whether we are prepared or not. This discovery is not waiting for our permission. It is simply presenting itself, and we, as a species, now have to decide whether we respond with smallness or with maturity. Because the truth is simple, we are not diminished by discovering we are not alone. We are expanded. The universe is wider than we imagined, and our story is only just beginning.